Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cooking from Quarantine. Today we are going to be braising some chicken legs in a kind of Greeky Mediterranean style. Basically the reason we're doing this dish today is because I had a lot of things in the house that lends themselves to cooking Greek food. So first of all, I had all of this fabulous rosemary in the house. Phenomenal. And it's going to go bad if I don't use it. We have fresh oregano, which again, going to go bad if I don't use it. It's already like kind of starting to turn, but since we're braising it, it'll be fine. I had a bunch of Kalamata olives in the house. I don't know about you, but when I buy olives, they sit in the fridge for like a million years. I mean, I imagine olives go bad. They're a fruit and there's oil in them and both of those things go bad, but like, I feel like olives are sort of impervious to expiration. So yeah, I had a bunch of olives in the house. This recipe, by the way, would work just as well if you've got green olives in the house or no olives in the house. But I had Kalamata olives, so that's what we're using. And this is probably like 25 olives or so. It was just kind of the bottom of the container that I had. I diced up one large Spanish onion, any kind of onion will do in this dish, and about 3 large cloves of garlic. I love garlic, and I don't think that garlic should be measured by recipe. I think it gets measured with your heart, but it also gets measured by flavor, and I don't want garlic to be the main event of this dish, so we're going a little shorter on garlic today than we usually do. I have 10 chicken drumsticks. I had bought a family pack, so I'm cooking all of them up because, you know, nobody eats like one drumstick and then puts it down. Usually a few of them are consumed at the same time. So this is 12 chicken drumsticks. This recipe would work just as well if you were making 4 chicken drumsticks. It's super easy. Fantastic olive oil. Again, this is extra virgin olive oil, which I typically don't cook with. It's more of a finishing oil, but it's what I have in the house, so that's what we're using. Another Olive Oil Jones product that I really love, this is their sweet Riesling vinegar. It's sort of like their take on balsamic vinegar. This is a Spanish vinegar. It's terrific. We needed some kind of acidity. I thought I would be using a bunch of lemons in this dish as my acidity to deglaze our pan, but when I went into my fridge, apparently I only have half a lemon, so when life gives you half a lemon, you know, add Riesling. And then finally, I have a bunch of chicken stock in the house. If you haven't watched my video on cooking chicken stock yet, please do. But anyway, I have so much chicken stock in the house, I don't even know what to do with myself, so I needed a dish that lends itself to using all of these ingredients I have in my house that are going to go bad. You can substitute out your favorite herbs for what herbs I'm using. If you want to make this more in an Italian style because you have basil in the house and you have some tomatoes in the house that are starting to turn, throw them all in. Tomatoes would take the place of olives, your basil would take the place of rosemary. This is supposed to be fun. Don't make yourself nuts. And also, any other protein would work in this dish. If you have chicken thighs, throw them in there. I already made my chicken thighs the other night. I had all of this sauce left over from a brisket that I made, marinated the chicken thighs in there, roasted them up. Beautiful. So that's the ingredients that we need today. We're going to preheat our oven to 325. Braising is a different kind of cooking than we're used to. Let me turn on my oven while I talk to you about braising. I love braising. I especially love braising when we're using kind of cheaper cuts of meat or cuts of meat that aren't as naturally flavorful. 325. Because braising is really meant to bring out the natural flavors in whatever we're cooking. So we're going to brown our chicken just to get it crispy and to get the flavors moving. Then remove it from the pot, add all of these kind of saucy ingredients, throw the chicken back into the pot, and let it simmer in all of those juices for a few hours. Braising is like a 2-hour production, and you don't even need to stir the thing while it's in there. It's, you know, once you get the browning of everything done, it goes right in the oven, and you forget about it for 2 hours. So like go play, I was gonna say go play Monopoly, but like when has Monopoly ever taken 2 hours? It's always like a 7-hour production that ends in like half the family hating each other because they're secretly slumlords. Anyway, we're also going to use, I'm using this oval Le Creuset Dutch oven. This dish would also work if you have a braiser, which is, I know Le Creuset makes them, I don't have one, but they're kind of like wide, round, deep, but more wide than deep, with a lid. Or if you have a cast iron pan that you like using, anything that has a lid. And honestly, if you don't have a lid and you have a favorite cast iron pan, just throw some aluminum foil on top of it when we go to put it in the oven. Does the same thing. If you have a really fantastic saute pan that you love, that's really deep, like for making sauces, that would also work for this as well. So don't let cookware get in the way of creating dishes like this, because we're home cooks, we're not professionals, we have what we have. Either you registered for things that you actually use, or you didn't, or you inherited like kind of weird things, or like stole things from ex-roommates, or like the best thing to come out of a previous relationship is that you got to like steal their really good chef's knife or whatever it was. You know, let's use what we have in the house. We can always make do. So with that, we're going to start with the browning of our chicken. I've let this chicken come up to room temperature for the last like 15 minutes, and I've also let it dry out. I patted it with some paper towels, but I've also just kind of been letting it sit by an open window, letting nature take its course. You want these to be dry and not cold when you put them into the pan, or else they will not brown. So that's our first step. I'll meet you over by the oven. So the first thing we're going to do is put sort of a medium flame underneath our pot, like a medium high, because we do want to get the chicken browned. And we're going to toss in our olive oil. Since I'm using 12 drumsticks, I actually have to brown these in batches. So I need, instead of just using the plate that the chicken's on and having it nearby, I actually need to pull an additional plate to be able to take some of the cooked chicken off of the stove. So we're going to be searing it in batches. You do not have to cook it all the way through. You're just trying to get some of the brown bits out of the chicken. So as we wait for our oil to heat up, and you really just want to be able to kind of smell the oil, and then you'll know that you're ready to cook. So the key to getting chicken to brown is that we are not going to crowd the pan. So I have 12 chicken drumsticks here. I'm probably going to cook, I'll show you how big my pot is. I'm probably only going to cook about 4 at a time. So when our oil starts rippling, and it is starting to ripple now, we're going to put in our first drumstick. And I did that a little on the early side. It's now starting to make just a little bit of noise, but I don't think that that oil was actually hot enough. So we're going to wait to put in the rest of the chicken drumsticks. And I want to show you how long I'm actually talking about. And again, the key to getting things brown when you're cooking is you don't want to move them after you put them in the pan. That's also why we need to wait for it to, we have to be patient and wait for it to come up to temperature, which I did not do because again, we're home cooks and sometimes we do things a little wrong. So now I think that's the sound that we're looking for when they go in the pan. And again, if we crowd the pan, it's also going to cool down the temperature of the pan, which we don't want. So yeah, like I said, I think I'm putting 4 in. And the idea is that we are not going to move these at all now that they're in there. But what we are going to do is we're going to salt and pepper them while they're just sitting there chilling out, getting happy. So let's grab our kosher salt and our black pepper grinder. And it is important to season them at this stage because you're not going to have an opportunity to flavor this much as you go since you're really just putting it straight into the oven after this. So flavor your food. Get a good amount of kosher salt going on there. And a pretty decent amount of cracked black pepper. And then when we turn them over to get the other side browned, we'll just season that side as we go. And again, I don't want to cut away because I do want you to see how long it takes to get the proper sear on this. It's popping a little bit, so I'm going to lower the heat just a smidge. Again, we want it to stay hot in here so that we get a sear going. Nothing's brown yet. So again, if you're making this dish and you'd rather make it in kind of an Italian style or even like a kind of French style with some more Provençal flavors, like getting some carrots and celery going in here, which would also be very good with the rosemary, etc. Perfectly fine. Cook with what you like. I happen to love Greek cooking. I think it strikes a really great balance between feeling sophisticated because the flavors are interesting and nuanced, but also it's relaxed because like most of Greek cooking and Greek food is like eating something that either was on a stick or like dipping stuff into other stuff. So I kind of like that juxtaposition. Okay, we're gonna start turning these over. I'm only really turning the ones that I put meat side down instead of fat side down, because what I really want, I want the fat side to render and get dark. So the one that I left fat side down, I'm going to keep there. I'm going to turn that little dude last. And again, we're not cooking these all the way through. We're just getting them browned a little so that not only do we get the flavor of browning them, which is called the Maillard reaction, but you're getting your pot seasoned as well. And so the sauce that we're going to create around this will have all of the flavors of the chicken already in it. And see, you can actually see the chicken pieces moving a little bit. This is a nice hot pan. Already starting to brown it. Don't move them. You can peek a little, but don't take them off the heat just yet. But again, it's totally unnecessary to actually cook them all the way through because they're going to be sitting in a hot oven for a long time. This guy I haven't flipped yet, so let's flip him over. I would have liked that to be a little more brown. I guess I'm feeling impatient today. So this is the first guy that I had put in. Let's see how he's doing. Yeah, I think we're going to go just a little bit longer. We really do want to get some golden color on these before we pull them off and start with the next batch of chicken. And like I said, you can do this with chicken thighs. This is a great dish for short ribs. Anything that kind of calls for low and slow is a great thing to braise. We just want the fat to render a little bit more. And of course there's going to be, I check all of them because there's hot spots in the pan. Or at least in my pans there are. See that? We're getting some golden brown color on. I'm still going to leave it like another few minutes just so that I can pull them all off together and get the next batch going. But these are now nearly browned enough. What I haven't done yet is I haven't seasoned this side. So before we forget to do that, let's salt and pepper these babies up. Season both sides of your food. It's like color even the back of your hair. Same concept. If you're doing it, do the whole thing. Don't just do the front. Okay, and so now I think we're very close to pulling off this first batch. I just want you to see how long it takes to sear on both sides, and then I'll do the rest of the batches off camera, and we'll come back when we're ready to make our sauce together. But until these get pulled, I want you to see how long it takes. Yeah, they're moving along. These little guys are getting there. Do not taste any of this chicken as it's cooking either. Even the pieces that look a little bit done, they're not done. Chicken needs to cook to an internal temperature of 160 degrees at least in order for it to be safe to consume. So just because it looks a little done, don't taste it along the way. Okay, now I think it's time to start pulling some of these bad boys off. I'll show you. This is the brown that we got going on. Nice color. Just putting it on the side. We're also going to want all of the juices that cook off onto our plate to go back in when we're ready to put all of the pieces back in. So anything that has sides to it that would collect sauce, or collect juices rather, is what you want to store your chicken on while you're waiting to cook the next batch. So now I'm going to cook the rest of the chicken off. I'm just going to brown it, and we will come back when we're ready to create our sauce. Okay, so we're about ready to pull off our last pieces of chicken. Here we go, coming out of the hot pan. And you now want to lower your heat because we're going to add our onions and garlic, and we don't want any of that to scorch when we put it into this hot pan. It's much more delicate than meat and fat is. So we've lowered our heat, and we are throwing on our onions and garlic to start getting them nice and translucent. And you want to stir as soon as they get in there, because any little brown bits that you could pick up just from letting these guys take a bath together is great. Really kind of scratch the surface as you start sauteing these. And if there's still brown bits on the bottom, don't worry about it, because when we put the rest of the acids into this dish, the lemon and the balsamic vinegar, all of that will be picked up and deglazed off. So we don't have to worry about that. So what we're looking for is to get all of these onions and all of this garlic getting nice and fragrant and translucent looking before we add any additional liquids to this pan. And it smells so good already. I mean, you know, if you don't like the smell of onion and garlic cooking, like, what do you like, you anhedonic motherfucker? Okay, so these are now starting to soften just a little bit. Smells so good. And it's picking up all of the salt and pepper that we had used in order to season our chicken. So now that's all seasoning the onions and garlic. And all of it, you know, it's now cooking not just in olive oil, but also in chicken fat. So that ain't bad. And that's part of why it smells so damn good in here. We're now going to add our olives. Again, if you're using tomato or anything, this would be the time to add it in. And, you know, you can add tomato to this dish too. It doesn't just have to be olives. If you have both in the house, toss those bad boys in there. With a braise, it's like what doesn't get braised, honestly? Okay, I'm gonna up the heat now a little bit more. And honestly, just the olive juice going in here from the olives, it's also helping to pick up some of the brown bits that were once there. This is looking and smelling great. I do want to kind of shout out about dicing these veggies, or fruit as the case may be, with olives. We do want everything to be roughly the same size. The olives I just kind of rough chopped, but my goal in rough chopping them was to get them about the same size as the dices that I made on the onion. because even though they're two totally different textures with different kind of heat thresholds, as much as you can make things the same size, because first of all, just for yummy bites, that's a great thing to do, but also it makes everything kind of cook at the same time. Okay, so all of this is getting translucent, and again, you don't need to cook this down a hell of a lot because it's going to be braising in our oven for the next 2 hours. So, you know, cook off the raw flavors and get everything a little soft, but you know, you don't need to be caramelizing anything right now. That's not really the point of how we braise. Okay, so this is our onions, garlic, and olives. We also have a couple of herbs that I'm going to throw in now. We have our rosemary, which should be a predominant flavor in here as much as it can compete with the olives. The way you put rosemary into the dish is that you take the rosemary and you go backwards off of the stalk, I guess we'll call it, and it all just kind of ends up in your hands, and then you kind of sprinkle it in. Oop, lost one to the cause. Okay, it's okay if there's little stems and stuff in here, because after this braises, we're going to take the sauce, or we'll take the chicken pieces out when it's done braising, and we're going to put our sauce back on the stovetop and start reducing it. And so when we do that, we'll pull out like anything that you don't really want in the sauce. But again, this is like a rustic kind of dish, so it's okay that there's little rosemary twiglets. Twiglet, who is a lesser known member of the Winnie the Pooh troupe. Just getting all of that nice and mixed together. So yeah, it's okay that we'll have these little rosemary twiglets in here. It doesn't make a difference, doesn't hurt anybody. And now we're going to put in our fresh oregano. And honestly, I just took another look at my oregano. It doesn't look good. So what should we put in instead? Because I feel like this does need another herb. So let's do, because that oregano is really looking skanky. So first of all, let's put in a bay leaf, because you can never go wrong by putting in a bay leaf. And since I'm making so much chicken, why don't we put in 2? And again, bay leaves are something that we're going to fish out later because you don't want to eat them. You just want the flavor to develop alongside the chicken. And what else do we have? We've got herbes de Provence, which is great if we were making kind of a different rendition of this. We have thyme. Thyme would be pretty good. I wonder if I have a little bit more. Oh, I have dried oregano. Let's use a little bit of dried oregano and thyme, right? What the hell? So that's Corona times. We got to just make do with what we have. We're all living like pioneer people right now. If pioneer people had Zoom meetings where they got to like look at their coworkers' dogs. Okay, so we're tossing some oregano in here. A little bit more than that because we do have a lot of pieces of chicken that got to make their way into this. We'll do some thyme, and all of these herbs really do blend really well together. They mesh well. Rosemary, thyme, oregano, all very prevalent in Greek cooking. That's the other thing, you know, think about the dishes that you like at your favorite restaurants and see what's in them. Find out. Ask the waiter. Ask to talk to the chef. They love talking about their own cooking. They love talking about anybody's cooking. Who doesn't like talking about cooking? But any of these dishes that you like, try to understand what flavor profiles make up your favorite dishes, and then just start adding those things to your home cooking, and it'll take you a really long way. Okay, so this is all now starting to get really lovely looking, and so it's time to add our acids. So first I'm going to use some lemon, just because this thing is so like kind of tragic looking and like it's getting a little dry even. So, and it's okay if the pits go in. Again, this is not fancy cooking. If you want to use wine in here, that's perfectly fine. You'll probably use about half a cup of wine. Use red, use white, use whatever you like. Whatever kind of mood you're in tonight. As the great William Martin Joel once wrote. Okay, so that lemon basically did nothing because there's not enough juice in there. And, I mean, it made it nice and fragrant, but it didn't really do anything, which is why we have our backup of some vinegar. And what I'm expecting it to do when I say it did nothing is that I want the brown bits to get picked up when I put it in. So we need something like vinegar. Probably going to put about 1/4 cup of vinegar because vinegar is like a holy shit kind of flavor. When it's in there, you know it. And even though this is a sweet vinegar, it still has that like hella pungent vinegary aroma to it. There we go. This is starting to get the browns up off the bottom of the pan. Those little guys. Everything on the sides of the pan starting to come off. And what we're going to do is just kind of cook off the real acidic flavor and aroma that's coming off of the vinegar. As soon as that smell starts to sweeten a little, we know that we've done the right thing. And remember, all of this is going to cook for a very long time in the oven. So even if it's not sweet right now, it will be, because all of this is going to come together and all of the sugar content that's inside the veggies, the vinegar, everything that we've put in here is going to start to develop alongside all of the amazing chicken parts. Okay, so we're now going to, now that we've got like some real steam coming off of this and we've deglazed our pan a bit, like I said, red wine, white wine, whatever you have in the house, toss a little champagne in there, like who cares? It's end of days, whatever you've got, just use. We're now going to add some chicken stock. How much chicken stock? Depends on how many pieces you're cooking. The idea is that we're not trying to submerge our meat. We just want to give it like a little hot tub to hang out in. So what I poured on is about, let's see, like 1/3 cup of chicken stock, and I'm just trying to bring that to temperature to let the ingredients get to know each other. I'll show you what that's looking like now. So good. I'm going to kick up the heat just a little bit because I do want to start bringing this to almost a boil. Those beautiful olives in there with the bay leaves and the rosemary. It's so pretty. God, I love cooking. And even just the color of this sauce is really phenomenal. Like, when else do you cook with things that are gorgeously purple, but you didn't put any red wine in? Like, that's really cool. Okay. So we're just gonna let this get a little hotter before we throw our pieces of chicken back in. And then once the chicken goes back in, we'll see kind of where we've netted out with our liquid to chicken ratio. And then we're going to add just a little bit more chicken stock so that it goes probably like halfway up the chicken pieces, not halfway up the pot. Just getting the chicken like halfway submerged. Make sure you take everything, all these little pieces of onion off the sides of your pot so that it all gets to go into the hot tub together. This smells so good. Start nestling our chicken pieces back in here a little. Take this guy out so that we can see what we're doing. Just getting all of them kind of happy to know each other. You know, I'm actually gonna, here we go. These will fit better this way if they're kind of end to end. That way we can fit more pieces, because I am cooking, some would argue, too much chicken, but I wouldn't be friends with people who would argue that, so we're just gonna say I'm cooking the right amount of chicken. Okay, here we go, getting those guys in. Just end to end, kind of like 69ing, which I realize most people aren't a fan of, but for chicken I think it's okay. Now I have 3 more pieces of chicken that I do have to get in here. I'm not really sure. There we go. We'll make it fit. We'll make it fit. Let's get you, I don't know. Where are you gonna go, dude? Come on, there's gotta be a spot for you, buddy. Nah, just kind of in the middle. Okay, so this actually does look like a pretty good amount of liquid. I think I'm just gonna add like a smidge more because these pots get very hot and so the liquid is going to cook down pretty quickly. So I'm adding maybe a 1/4 cup more liquid. I'll show you what we've got now. Okay, so all of those are sitting in the bathtub together. We're going to put our cover onto our pot, grab some oven mitts because this pot is very, very hot. I should have said also before you preheat your oven, you should make sure the racks in your oven are arranged so that a pot this size can be put in there with no problem. We're shutting our flame off. Opening our oven, putting the whole thing in. And I'll see you in 2 hours when all that's done and we're ready to reduce our sauce. Okay, so it's been 2 hours. Let's take our braised chicken out of the oven. Okay, let's take a look, see how we did. Wow. Not only does this smell absolutely incredible, it is totally gorgeous. So just a few quick steps before we're finally done. Let's take the pieces of chicken out of our pot and put them on a platter so that we can start reducing our sauce. Let's get a flame going underneath our pot. Kind of a high flame. We're looking to let it boil so that it can reduce. Oh my God, the briny smell of the olives, the rosemary is so pungent. This smells so great. And the chicken is just like fall off the bone. It's literally falling off the bone tender. Amazing smell. So what we're doing now is we're reducing our sauce. So we're letting some of the liquid evaporate out so that it gets thicker and becomes almost like a gravy. We're not even going to add any thickening agent to it, like flour or cornstarch. We're just going to let the juices cook down. Wow, yeah, this is totally falling off the bones. We're just going to let the juices cook down so that the sauce thickens. Okay, so now show you what we have now. So now in our pot we have only the liquid that it was braised in. Here's what the chicken looks like out of the pan. Really beautiful. I mean, so totally tender. And so we're going to continue to let this cook and just keeping it at a pretty good medium boil and stirring it continuously. That's how it's going to thicken up. You don't need to add anything to it. And you'll know that it's thick when you see how you can see the bottom of the pan a little bit when I drag my spatula through it. Well, once it's fully reduced, you'll see that separation in the pan for a little longer, or the sauce will coat the back of your spoon, depending on what kind of spoon you're using. I'm using a non-stick spatula, so the idea that it's going to coat the back of my spoon is not going to happen, because that's not how non-stick works. The whole idea is that in order for something to coat, it has to stick. But, there's very little liquid in here to begin with, because so much of it cooked down while it was in the oven, and we're going to shut our oven off. So we're just cooking kind of the last bit of this, and as we go, we can pull out some things like our bay leaf, discard that. Even the rosemary has been cooking so long that it's actually pretty tender now. If yours isn't, or if you put in a whole sprig and didn't break it off, then now would be the time to pull that out. But I know we have a second bay leaf somewhere in here. Where did that guy go? Here it is. No. Is it possible my other bay leaf just dissolved? Maybe. These tricky bay leaves. Okay, so let me show you how this is thickening up. So you can really see it on the sides of the bowl, or the pan rather, that it's getting nice and thick. I think that we'll leave it to cook probably another 3 minutes or so. Also, when we store the chicken, when we put it away for later, if you're done eating and you have leftovers, if the sauce is nice and thick, it'll keep the chicken nice and moist and tender. Yeah, that's the consistency we want to see. How it's taking a minute or two, not a minute, but a few seconds to come back together. It's like the parting of the Red Seas in the Charlton Heston version of the Ten Commandments. I guess every version of the Ten Commandments has the parting of the Red Sea, but, the Charlton Heston version, it's got a little special something. So this is very kind of the season. So now that this is nice and thick, we're going to turn our flame off. We're going to pour this over our chicken pieces. Just kind of dump the whole thing out. Careful not to burn yourself. You'll see our completely finished product. Let's take just a little taste, just to make sure it came out the way we thought it was going to. Take a little piece of chicken from here, get it really mixed in with the sauce. Wow. Oh my God. The chicken is super tender. So flavorful. You can really taste the olives, the vinegar that we used, a little bit of the lemon. It has this like great sharp flavor. Absolutely terrific chicken dish. And it'll keep great in the fridge for quite a few days. Simple to heat up, and a real crowd pleaser. So thank you again for this episode of Cooking from Quarantine. Bye.